So today I'm going to work on a pastel painting. This is my reference photo. It was taken at Glacier National Park. It's pretty interesting. I love the color in here. I love what's happening in the water, the reflections and all the stuff there, and then the hazy mountains going back in the distance. So I'm thinking that's going to make a good pastel painting. So one of the things when we want to think about when we do pastel painting is you want to think about color as value, okay? So value is primary, color is secondary. So trees are just not green. There's lots of colors in these trees that you could add into it. In the shadows, you could have blues or reds or purples, in those deep shadows. But the value of the color is what's really important. So if I look at these, look at these colors. So this purplish red is darker than this yellow, right? Okay. So, and then this purplish red is darker than this red, which is darker than that red, which is darker than that red. So you see, these all have value. And so I want to really concentrate on what values I'm laying down. How I'm going to start out is I'm going to make an underpaint, and I'm going to use I have some alcohol in here. And so the nice thing about alcohol is when I spray it on the pastels and paint with it, it evaporates almost instantly, so I don't have to wait for it to dry like if I used water. I could use water if I wanted to, but the alcohol works really nice. It gets a little smelly. You usually will want to have a fan on. So underpaint. The general rule for underpaint is you're always painting the complement. So this yellowish green here, the complement of that would be a red or a purple. So in the sky, which I think will do more blue, so the complement of that would be red, or would be a red, orange, or even going towards yellow, which would make for a good underpaint. What happens with the underpaint is you cover most of it up, but you leave parts of it peeking through, and it adds more vibrance, more excitement to a painting. And it's a little harder to do when you're dealing with, if I were to paint this in oil, it'd be harder to have that underpaint show through, because oil covers, it's more opaque than pastels. Pastels can be transparent depending on how thick you put them on, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to do, and so what I did was I drew this out ahead of time, okay? Then I thought, oh, I should put, and I used watercolor paper just because it's thicker, and then I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to put a gesso over the top. And so I have this, I did the drawing, then I have this clear gesso. It's supposed to dry completely clear. It sort of works like that, but in the gesso seals the paper, but in the gesso I added this fine pumice, and pumice makes the paper like it's turns the paper into a sanded paper, which is really nice. You can put lots of layers of pastel on. Normally, if you just use a regular piece of paper, you can only put maybe 2, at the most 3 layers on a pastel. Here I can do like 6, 7, 8 layers, and then I could spray it with a fixative that seals it, and then I could put more layers on. So a lot of times pastels are about getting all those layers, and it just adds for a very interesting painting. So I'm going to keep this here, and I'm going to start out, okay. So what kind of pastels I have? So this is the brand I have for one of the pastels. And then I have the new pastels, which is a hard pastel. So I have a hard pastel and a soft pastel. And so if I look at this, this is the brand of this one, New Pastel. Bought these years ago and I really liked them, and so I bought a couple of sets. And I'm really glad I did that now because this is really expensive. And I probably wouldn't be able to afford it. These pastels are fairly inexpensive. So they're a soft, kind of soft medium pastel, but they work pretty well for what we're going to do here. Okay, so I'm going to rearrange things, try to get it set up. Okay, so how am I going to start out? Well, the sky's kind of a blue color, and so I am going to maybe start out by adding some orange up here. And you're going, orange? Why would you add orange? Well, it's the complement. I'm going to add some orange, but I know the sky is going to be very, very light. And I want it fairly light. Okay. So maybe I'll add, ooh, here's a really nice yellow. Mix that into it. And see, I'm leaving some of the paper show through. That's okay, because I'm going to add, I'm going to make this into a wash, a kind of a watercolor wash when I add alcohol to it. And you'll see how that works in a second. Okay. And we'll just let that get nice and close. And when I have these different layers, so when I add blue on top of this, this will make the blue a little less strong of a blue. It'll desaturate it a little bit, which will be good, you know. Maybe I'll bring some of this down here. So when I look at this picture, I see, okay, value. This is darker, this is lighter. So I want to have that difference in value in here. And I want, let's try this more maybe yellow. So I want that lighter in value as it goes back, right? So I'm just painting in value. Now you notice I have these, you know, texture in this pastel, and that's from when I painted the gesso on top, this gesso, and the pumice. And the brush I used had a really, it's just a really cheap brush. It left a lot of strokes behind, but I'm not too worried about that because I'll use some of that texture later on, but some of it is just going to be, okay, I like that. Okay, I'm going to use, so I have green, I have a yellowish green, yeah, so maybe I'll use a red. Now when I first start out here, I'm really looking for value, and I'm going to try to do all my dark values first, and I'm going to go from dark to light. So I'm going to lay in dark values, and you're going to notice some of these are going to be way darker than what they need to be. Let's see, I'm going to add some really dark, oh yeah, there we go. This is a really dark blue, almost purple. So I'm going to really add some really darks in the background here. And I'm hoping that my drawing shows through a little bit later on. It should be okay because I used a real fine point Sharpie on this. Okay, and all these are going to be much darker. But I'm thinking value. So let's see. So So I'm going to do maybe a light purple. Ooh, this might be a fun purple in here for some of these. So this is just the stuff that's going to, I'm not really doing the drawing yet. This is just an underpaint. So I'm adding a value, so it's not white paper, okay? So I'm trying to stay away from white paper. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to add my alcohol to this. And it should make it look pretty good. Okay, green. So I want maybe a little more red over here. So I'm going to add a light red. Where do I have a light red? Oh, that's kind of a reddish brown, but that'll work. But I'm thinking value. Okay, guys? You're thinking value. Oh, that's almost too brown. Let's add a little more red into that. Oh, there we go. And this is going to be a kind of green in here. And this is going to be very light, you know, so it's going to be a blue, so maybe I'll just do a very light orange wash up here. Not very, see, I'm barely getting enough pigment on here. Okay, let's add some of that down there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, okay, this is the stinky part. I'm going to get that out of the way so I don't spray that. So in here is alcohol. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to do the, oops, not my pastel. I'm just going to do parts of it at a time. So I sprayed it with alcohol. Ooh. And I'm just putting a layer of pigment down. And I'm going to work on top of this. Okay, and I want it to go over the top of that more, a little more. Phew! Better turn my fan on. That's pretty strong smelling stuff. So I'm controlling it a fair amount. Some people just like to take their brush and dip it in the alcohol and swish it around. I'm just trying to keep a little more control in a process where you're out of control just about all the time. Just kind of working against myself. Notice how this is starting to mix together. I like that. Okay. Okay, now my mountains are turning a little dark, but that's okay, because I'm going to add lighter values on top of here, and it's all going to make sense. And look at that, I'm mixing some of that, just mixing a little bit of mess together. Green, and I'm going to add more red in here. There we go. That's going to get nice and soupy. Now I'm just doing overall large shapes. Yeah, I drew a lot of detail into this, and I'm not worried about it because that's showing through this light pastel spray that I have going here, and that's fine. Okay, I'm going to do this lighter stuff first because I don't want to get my paintbrush all gooey with all the dark stuff. You'll see how that works in a second. Okay, this will be darker in value. Oops, pull some of this down here. And yeah, you do kind of make a bit of a mess, but I'm not worried about it right now because a lot of this gets covered up. And you're going, well, why do it if you're going to cover it all up? Well, that's a good question. The cool thing is that these colors will peek through in areas, and it'll add two more layers of depth to the drawing. It'll make it a little more interesting than if I were just to use white paper, because then you'd have the white paper peeking through. And I don't want the white paper peeking through. I want these darker values showing through. Yeah, there we go. And I'm not worried about getting the exact contour here. You know, and you just get the feel for it. You know, we're just making the impression of the trees. So see how the trees, you know, these colors are blending together. I have a lot of dark values. That's good, because this is going to become, it's going to have a lot of little green highlights and stuff in it. So that will show up later. And I could do some of these rocks down here. I know this is going to be a little darker in value. And right now, this just, you're thinking, wow, that just looks like a mess. It doesn't look like anything. It looks like something, you know, a little kindergarten kid would be doing. And yeah, sort of, but it's what we're going to do with it later that's going to be interesting. Okay, and so I have some value back there. And I can still see my drawing peeking through, which is okay. You know, so the things that are up closest are going to have the strongest values. Yeah, I'm going to add some of this down here. I want some of that. I want that to be darker. Because remember, I'm doing all my dark values first. Yeah, I do have some lighter tones, but I have these darker values that I want in here. And the things that are closest to me are going to have the greatest contrast. So this will have very, very darks and very, very lights. Okay, I want that lighter here. So I'm just going to spray that a little more and pull some of that up. Oh, yeah, okay. So this field gets a little lighter as it goes away. And then I have all these light values back here. And I have some darker stuff that happens in here. And pull some of these shadows down, because I know the shadows come down in here. There. So these shadows are reflecting in the water, which is just fun. Okay, now I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and that'll just take a few minutes, and then we'll get back to actually drawing this pastel out and actually start the drawing. So we haven't really started the drawing yet. Okay, so I've left this sit for, you know, what, 3 minutes or so, and everything is almost dry. And so I'm going to start messing around with working on this pastel drawing. And so the first thing I'm going to do is the stuff furthest away first. Okay, and what I see here furthest away would be the sky. Let's see if I can put this in here. So I'm going to add some blue in the sky. Now see how the orange is showing through. That's okay. I'm good with that. And so I'm going to bring it right down onto these mountains in the distance. And I'm adding lots of skies. Now this is still slightly damp, I probably should have waited a little longer, but I am not always a patient person. Okay, so I'm looking at some of these. Okay, that's getting there. So I'm adding some of this blue down into my treetops. And in that mountain. So I want some of that blue. Now, the cool thing here is these first layers we wash out with alcohol, and then we also will take pipe foam. I'll take a chunk of this pipe foam. I don't know if I can find my X-Acto knife here. And well, I don't need the spider webs. This is just sitting in my garage. So I'm going to take a chunk of this, and I'm going to use my pipe foam. Well, I guess I could have ripped it instead. And I don't need the glue stuff. So I can take this pipe foam now, and I can use this to blend a little. Now I want this to blend in because I don't want all that orange showing through. A little bit is okay. Later on, I won't use the pipe foam at all to blend because I don't want to do that. Okay. Notice how it gives an interesting mood to the sky. Now, I know the sky is going to be darker higher up it is. So I'm going to add a different blue up here.